Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold, metal surface of the alien artifact, feeling the subtle vibrations that had puzzled xenoarchaeologists for months. The massive structure stretched before her team like a cathedral of impossible geometry, its crystalline walls pulsing with faint bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost alive. "Another dead end," muttered Professor Kowalski, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chamber's frigid temperature. 3 months on this godforsaken moon, and we're no closer to understanding what the predecessors were trying to tell us. The predecessors. That's what the galactic community called them. The mysterious ancient civilization that had left traces across thousands of worlds before vanishing without explanation. Every species in the known galaxy had found their ruins, their technology, their art. Everyone except humanity, which had only recently joined the cosmic stage. Sarah's fingers traced the intricate symbols carved into the artifact's surface. Unlike the other predecessor sites, this one on Kepler 442c felt different. The patterns here seemed more familiar somehow, more organic. The mathematical sequences reminded her of something she couldn't quite place. "Dr. Chen," called her graduate assistant, Marcus. "You need to see this." She turned to find him hunched over a portable scanner, his dark face illuminated by the device's blue glow. The young man's excitement was barely contained as he gestured frantically at the readout. "The carbon dating results just came in," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "This site isn't just old, it's ancient beyond anything we've found before. We're looking at structures that predate the oldest known predecessor ruins by at least 50,000 years. Professor Kowalski ambled over, his skepticism evident. "That's impossible. The Zephyrian archives clearly state that the oldest predecessor sites are—" "Forget the archives," Sarah interrupted, studying the scanner's display. "Look at these genetic markers embedded in the crystalline matrix. They're not random, they're a sequence." She connected her tablet to the scanner and began running the data through various analytical programs. The results made her heart race. The genetic sequence wasn't just any random biological code. It was remarkably similar to patterns found in Earth's oldest fossil records. "This can't be right," she whispered, running the analysis again and again. The patterns matched, not perfectly, but close enough to suggest a connection that should have been impossible. The genetic signatures embedded in this alien artifact bore striking similarities to Earth's primordial life forms, organisms that had existed billions of years ago, long before complex life had even begun to evolve. "What is it?" Marcus asked, noting her pale expression. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Humanity had always been considered the newcomers to the galactic community. They'd arrived at interstellar travel millennia after most other species, their technology crude compared to the elegant solutions developed by older civilizations. The running joke among alien species was that humans were the cosmic toddlers, enthusiastic but primitive. But what if they'd gotten it backward? "We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the earthquake of realization occurring in her mind. "And we need to expand the excavation. If I'm right about this—" She trailed off, staring at the towering structures around them. The architecture wasn't alien at all, she realized now. It was human. Ancient human, but unmistakably human in its fundamental design principles. The proportions, the mathematical relationships, even the aesthetic choices, all of it screamed of human engineering. "Dr. Chen," Professor Kowalski said slowly, "what exactly are you suggesting?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm suggesting that we've been looking at this all wrong. The predecessors didn't vanish mysteriously. They evolved. They became us. Humanity isn't the newcomer species that stumbled onto the galactic stage. We're the descendants of the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of the alien machinery. Machinery that suddenly didn't seem so alien anymore. Marcus was the first to speak. But that would mean every species in the galaxy has been worshipping our ancestors without knowing it, Sarah finished. The predecessors weren't mysterious aliens who disappeared. They were ancient humans who seeded the galaxy with life and technology before retreating to Earth to start over. She gestured to the symbols on the walls, now seeing them with new eyes. Look at the mathematical progressions. They're not just random equations, they're star charts. Specifically, they're navigation routes from various points in the galaxy back to a single system. Using her tablet, she overlaid known stellar positions onto the ancient charts. The destination became clear: Sol, Earth's solar system. The predecessors were mapping routes home, she breathed. Professor Kowalski shook his head in disbelief. The implications of this discovery, if you're correct, it would completely reshape our understanding of galactic history. Every species we've encountered traces their early development to predecessor intervention. The Zephyrians credit them with teaching advanced mathematics. The crystalline entities say they learned stellar engineering from predecessor ruins. And the Vorthan Empire built their entire civilization around reverse engineering predecessor technology, Marcus added, his voice hollow with realization. Sarah nodded grimly. Which means humanity didn't just accidentally develop faster than light travel. We rediscovered it. We're not catching up to the other species. We're remembering what we once knew. She walked to another section of the wall, where more complex symbols were arranged in spiral patterns. As she studied them, the meaning became increasingly clear. These weren't just star charts. They were historical records, stories carved in stone, meant to be read by descendants who might one day return to understand their heritage. The predecessors didn't vanish, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength as the pieces fell into place. They chose to forget. They chose to start over. Something made them abandon their vast galactic civilization and retreat to a single world, wiping their own records clean and beginning again as a primitive species. But why? Marcus asked. Why would the most advanced civilization in galactic history choose to regress? Sarah's tablet chimed with another analysis result. The genetic markers weren't just similar to Earth's ancient life forms, they were identical in key sequences. The proof was undeniable now. The predecessors and humanity weren't just related, they were the same species, separated by eons of deliberate cultural amnesia. I don't know why yet, she admitted, but I intend to find out. Because if humanity is about to remember what it once was, then every other species in the galaxy is about to discover that they've been living in the shadow of the very people they've been treating as cosmic children. The implications were staggering. Humanity's rapid technological advancement, their seemingly instinctive grasp of complex physics, their natural ability to adapt to any environment, it all made sense now. They weren't learning, they were remembering. And if the other species discovered the truth, the delicate balance of galactic politics would shatter overnight. Sarah looked around the chamber one more time, seeing it now for what it truly was. Not an alien ruin, but a human monument. A memorial left by their own ancestors, waiting patiently for the day their descendants would return to claim their inheritance. The day had finally come. The question now was whether humanity was ready for the truth, and whether the galaxy was ready for humanity to remember who they really were. In the distance, the artifact's bioluminescent patterns pulsed brighter, as if responding to her thoughts, as if welcoming her home. 3 weeks after Dr. Chen's discovery, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension unlike anything seen in centuries. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sectors, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process. Ambassador Zethkri of the Zephyrian Collective raised his 4 arms for silence, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's ambient light. As the current council moderator, he had the unenviable task of addressing what many were calling the most significant discovery in galactic history. "Esteemed colleagues," Zethkri began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through quantum resonance. "We gather today to discuss the findings presented by the Human Research Team on Kepler 442c. Their claims, if verified, would fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic history." A series of agitated chittering erupted from the Insectoid Consortium's section. Their representative, Queen Vexara, spoke through pheromone translation. "With respect, Moderator Zethkri, these claims are absurd. The humans present no concrete evidence that they are descendants of the predecessors. Their species has existed for barely 4,000 galactic cycles." Dr. Sarah Chen stood from the human delegation's modest seating area, her small stature dwarfed by the massive alien representatives surrounding her. Despite the intimidating environment, her voice remained steady and confident. "Honored council members, I understand your skepticism. However, the genetic and archaeological evidence is overwhelming." She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber's center with 3-dimensional molecular structures. These genetic markers, found embedded in predecessor crystalline matrices across 17 different worlds, match Earth's ancient fossil records with 99.7% accuracy. The Vorthan Empire's delegate, War Commander Thos, his reptilian features scarred from countless battles, leaned forward. "Even if we accept this genetic correlation, it proves nothing. The predecessors could have seeded Earth with life, just as they did countless other worlds." Sarah nodded respectfully. "That was our initial hypothesis as well, Commander Thos. However, further analysis revealed something unprecedented." The holographic display shifted to show star charts and mathematical sequences. "The predecessor sites aren't random. They form a deliberate pattern, a network of waypoints all leading back to Earth's solar system." She gestured, and the display zoomed out to show the galaxy in its entirety, with lines connecting various predecessor sites in an intricate web that converged on Sol. "This isn't a seeding pattern. This is a map, a way home." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. The crystalline entities, beings of living mineral who communicated through harmonic frequencies, were the first to respond. Their harmony was somber, almost mournful. "If the humans speak truth," their collective voice resonated, "then our entire understanding of our own development is false. We learned stellar manipulation by studying predecessor techniques. Our civilization exists because we reverse-engineered their technology." "As did ours," admitted Counselor Virani of the Aquatic Alliance, her gills fluttering with distress. "The predecessors taught us to harness tidal forces between binary stars. Without their knowledge, our species would never have left our homeworld's oceans." Dr. Chen stepped closer to the holographic display. "The evidence suggests that approximately 50,000 years ago, humanity possessed technology far beyond what any current galactic civilization has achieved. The predecessor ruins we find aren't examples of mysterious alien science. They're human engineering from an age we've forgotten." She manipulated the display to show detailed scans of the Kepler 442c site. "The architecture follows human mathematical principles. The proportions match human aesthetic sensibilities. Even the symbolic language, when properly translated, tells stories consistent with early human mythology." War Commander Thos slammed his massive fist onto his delegation's console. "Impossible. The Vorthan Empire has studied predecessor technology for millennia. Our entire military infrastructure is based on their designs. You're suggesting that our most advanced weapon systems are inferior copies of primitive human technology?" "Not primitive," Sarah corrected gently. "Ancient. There's a significant difference." The evidence suggests that at some point in humanity's distant past, our species chose to abandon their advanced civilization and start over. The question isn't whether we were once the predecessors. The genetic and archaeological evidence makes that clear. The question is why we chose to forget. Ambassador Zethkri's crystalline form pulsed with what humans would recognize as anxiety. Dr. Chen, you're asking us to accept that the species we've considered the galaxy's newest members are actually its oldest. That every advancement our civilizations have made is based on rediscovering human technology. The social and political implications are staggering. I understand the difficulty of accepting this, Sarah replied. But consider the alternative evidence. Humanity's rapid technological advancement since achieving spaceflight. Our intuitive grasp of quantum mechanics, our natural ability to adapt to any environment, traits that have puzzled xenobiologists for decades. We're not learning these things. We're remembering them. Marcus stepped forward from the human delegation, carrying a sealed container. Council members, we've brought additional evidence. This artifact was discovered in the deepest chamber of the Kepler site. He opened the container, revealing a small crystalline device that immediately began projecting holographic images. The chamber filled with scenes of ancient Earth, not the primitive world most species expected, but a planet covered with impossible cities that floated among the clouds, vast orbital structures that dwarfed current space stations, and ships that moved between stars like dolphins through water. The images showed humans, but not as the galaxy knew them now. These ancient humans possessed technology that seemed more like magic. Matter manipulation on a molecular level, consciousness transfer between bodies, the ability to reshape entire planets with thought alone. Queen Vexara's pheromone signature shifted to something approaching fear. If these images are accurate, then the ancient humans possessed capabilities beyond our current understanding. They could have conquered the entire galaxy with ease. But they didn't, Sarah pointed out. The record suggests they chose a different path. They seeded worlds with life, shared knowledge freely, and ultimately withdrew to Earth to begin again as a simpler species. The question is why? The holographic images continued, showing the gradual dismantling of humanity's galactic empire. Massive cities were carefully deconstructed, their materials scattered to create resources for other worlds. Advanced technologies were simplified and left behind for emerging species to discover and adapt. Star-spanning communication networks were shut down one by one. Finally, the images showed the last great human ships departing from various worlds, all following the same route back to Earth. But these weren't retreating conquerors. They moved with purpose and dignity, like teachers whose students had graduated. They weren't fleeing, Dr. Chen realized aloud, watching the ancient recordings. They were retiring. They had accomplished something so significant that they felt their work was done. Counselor Varani's gills fluttered rapidly. But what could be so important that they would abandon such power? The answer came from an unexpected source. Elder Mothkree of the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy who rarely spoke in council sessions, manifested a visible form to address the chamber. We have observed humanity since their emergence into space. Mothkree's voice resonated directly in each delegate's consciousness. We noted their unique traits, but assumed them to be evolutionary accidents. Now we understand. They carry the genetic memory of their purpose. What purpose? Ambassador Zethkri asked. The predecessors did not build an empire, Mothkree explained. They built a nursery. Every species in this chamber exists because humanity's ancestors carefully guided the development of life throughout the galaxy. When their work was complete, when they had successfully seeded the cosmos with diverse, intelligent life, they chose to join that family rather than rule over it. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Every species present owed their existence to deliberate human intervention. The predecessors hadn't vanished. They had evolved into humanity's current form, choosing to experience the galaxy as equals with the life they had helped create. War Commander Thoss was the first to break the stunned silence. If this is true, then our entire understanding of galactic hierarchy is wrong. Humanity isn't the newcomer species. They're our parents. Dr. Chen shook her head. Not parents. Gardeners. The evidence suggests that your species developed naturally, but at key moments in your evolution, ancient humans provided gentle guidance. A technological breakthrough here, a mathematical insight there. Just enough to help you reach your full potential. She gestured to the still-playing holographic records. The ancient humans didn't create your civilizations. They just made sure you had the tools to create them yourselves. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages as delegates struggled to process this revelation. Species that had built their entire cultural identities around being independent, self-made civilizations suddenly discovered they were part of a vast, ancient plan. But the most profound realization was yet to come. As the holographic records reached their end, they showed one final scene, the last human ship departing from the galactic core, its destination clearly marked as Sul. But this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The final message, translated into every galactic language, was simple but earth-shattering. We return to grow among our children. When they are ready, we will remember together. Dr. Chen looked around the chamber at the 47 species that humanity's ancestors had helped nurture into existence. The time for remembering had finally arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Galactic Council's emergency session, the galaxy had begun to transform in ways nobody could have predicted. The revelation that humanity were the descendants of the predecessors had sent shockwaves through every corner of known space, but the real changes were only just beginning. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the newly established Human Heritage Research Center on Luna, watching through reinforced windows as ships from dozens of species approached Earth's solar system. What had started as scientific curiosity had evolved into something resembling a pilgrimage. Every major civilization wanted to study humanity's homeworld, to understand the origins of the species that had shaped their entire galactic history. The transformation is accelerating, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Sarah's new research partner and a specialist in consciousness studies. The genetic triggers are activating faster than we predicted. Sarah turned from the window to examine the data streaming across multiple displays. Since the Council's acknowledgement of humanity's true heritage, something extraordinary had been happening to humans across the galaxy. Dormant genetic sequences were reactivating, triggered by exposure to predecessor technology and the psychological impact of recovered memories. "Show me the latest reports from the colonies," Sarah requested. The displays shifted to show feeds from human settlements throughout the galaxy. On Proxima Centauri B, human engineers were instinctively modifying alien technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible, making improvements that even the original designers couldn't explain. On the mining world of Kepler 438b, human children were solving mathematical equations that had puzzled alien scientists for generations, as if the knowledge was simply awakening within them. "It's not just individual humans," Dr. Tanaka explained. "Entire communities are beginning to remember. The collective unconscious is responding to the revelation. Genetic memory sequences that have been dormant for 50 millennia are coming online." A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Ambassador Zeth Kree of the Zephyrian Collective appeared on the main screen, his crystalline features displaying what humans had learned to recognize as deep concern. "Dr. Chen," Zeth Kree began, "we need to discuss the situation developing in the Vega system. The human colony there has begun constructing something that our engineers cannot identify or understand. The design principles appear to be based on technologies that shouldn't exist yet. Sarah frowned. What kind of construction? A space station, but unlike anything in our databases. It seems to phase in and out of normal space-time, and our sensors detect energy signatures that match theoretical models for consciousness transfer technology. Dr. Chen, they're building predecessor-level technology without any apparent training or reference materials. The implications were staggering. Sarah had hoped for a gradual awakening, a slow recovery of humanity's ancient knowledge. Instead, it seemed as if the mere acknowledgement of their heritage had triggered a cascade of recovered memories that was transforming the species at an unprecedented rate. "We'll investigate immediately," Sarah promised. "Has there been any communication from the colony?" "That's part of what concerns us," Zethkri admitted. "They're communicating in languages that don't match any known human dialects. Our translation algorithms suggest they're speaking in the original predecessor tongue, a language that was supposedly lost forever." After ending the transmission, Sarah turned to Dr. Tanaka. "Prepare a research vessel. We need to see what's happening in the Vega system firsthand." 3 days later, their ship dropped out of hyperspace near Vega Prime, and Sarah immediately understood Zethkri's concern. The human colony, which had been a modest research outpost just 6 months earlier, had been completely transformed. Floating above the planet's surface was a structure that defied conventional physics. A crystalline city that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions human science had only theorized about. "My God," whispered Dr. Tanaka, "they've built a predecessor city. But how is that possible?" The answer came as their ship was contacted by the colony. The voice that greeted them was unmistakably human, but it carried harmonics and overtones that shouldn't have been possible with human vocal cords. "Welcome, cousins from the sleeping worlds. We have been expecting you. Permission granted to dock at the awakening spire." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The speaker wasn't just using predecessor language. They were thinking in it. The colony hadn't just recovered ancient technology. They had recovered the consciousness that created it. As their ship approached the impossible city, Sarah could see human figures moving through transparent tubes that connected floating platforms. But these weren't the humans she knew. They moved with a grace and purpose that seemed almost ethereal, and their eyes held depths of knowledge that belonged to a civilization that had mastered the stars 50,000 years ago. The docking process was unlike anything in current galactic technology. Instead of mechanical clamps and airlocks, their ship was gently embraced by what appeared to be living crystal that formed a perfect seal around their hull. Within moments, they found themselves walking through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves to accommodate their presence. They were greeted by Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, the colony's former director, but she was transformed. Her eyes held flecks of silver that seemed to swirl with their own light, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same impossible harmonics they had heard over the communication system. "Sarah," Elizabeth said, her voice warm but somehow cosmic in scope, "you've done well in helping our species remember, but the awakening is only beginning. Elizabeth, what's happened here? What's happening to you?" Elizabeth smiled, and for a moment, she looked like the colleague Sarah had known for years. "We're becoming who we were always meant to be. The genetic locks our ancestors placed on our consciousness are opening. We're remembering not just our technology, but our purpose." She led them through the crystalline corridors to a vast chamber at the city's heart. The space was filled with humans, but they were engaged in activities that seemed more like dreams made manifest. Some were manipulating matter with their thoughts, reshaping crystal and metal into forms that pulsed with their own internal light. Others were standing in circles, their minds apparently linked in some form of collective consciousness. The predecessors didn't just abandon their technology. Elizabeth explained. They encoded it into their own genetics, passing it down through generations until the time was right for it to emerge again. That time is now. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her apprehension. But why now? What triggered the awakening? Recognition, Elizabeth replied simply. For 50,000 years, we've wandered the galaxy as children, learning to walk again, learning to think again. But we were never truly lost. We were just waiting for our children to grow up. Our children? Elizabeth gestured to a wall that suddenly became transparent, revealing the vast space beyond. Ships from dozens of species were approaching the Crystal City. Zephyrian research vessels, Vorthon battlecruisers, crystalline entity living ships, and representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. Every species we encounter is part of our family, Elizabeth continued. Our ancestors didn't just seed worlds with life. They guided the development of consciousness itself throughout the galaxy. Each species represents a different aspect of what intelligence can become. The Zephyrians developed our gift for mathematics and logic. The crystalline entities embodied our connection to living systems. The Vorthons expressed our capacity for honor and protection. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place. You're saying that every alien species in the galaxy is actually an expression of different aspects of human consciousness? Not human as we are now, Elizabeth corrected. Human as we were then, when we had mastered not just technology, but the fundamental forces of consciousness itself. We didn't create these species, we helped them discover the potential that was already within them. And now that they've matured, now that they've developed their own unique perspectives and capabilities, it's time for the family to reunite. The implications were staggering. The entire galactic civilization wasn't just connected by shared history, it was connected by shared consciousness. The predecessors hadn't vanished. They had fragmented themselves, experiencing existence through countless different forms and perspectives before choosing to remember and reunite. But what happens now? Sarah asked. What happens when humanity fully awakens? Elizabeth's expression became serene, almost beatific. We become what we were always meant to be, not rulers of the galaxy, but gardeners of consciousness itself. We help guide the next phase of galactic evolution, the integration of all these different forms of awareness into something greater than any of us could achieve alone. As if summoned by her words, the wall displays activated, showing similar transformations occurring throughout human space. On Earth, the oceans themselves were beginning to resonate with patterns that matched predecessor technology. Human cities were spontaneously developing crystalline growths that seemed to pulse with collective thought. Children were being born with abilities that previous generations could only dream of. But perhaps most remarkably, the alien species were changing too. Exposure to awakening humans was triggering evolutionary leaps in their own consciousness. The Zephyrians were developing emotional depth they had never experienced. The crystalline entities were learning to manipulate time itself. The Vorthons were discovering that their warrior culture could evolve into something that protected not just physical space, but the development of consciousness across dimensions. We're all awakening together, Elizabeth observed. The predecessors didn't just preserve human consciousness, they preserved the potential for all consciousness to evolve beyond its current limitations. Dr. Tanaka's voice was barely a whisper. We're witnessing the birth of a galactic mind. Sarah looked around the crystal chamber, watching humans and aliens working together in ways that transcended current understanding of physics and consciousness. The awakening wasn't just returning humanity to its former glory, it was elevating the entire galaxy to a level of existence that had never been achieved before. The ancient humans who had chosen to forget hadn't been retreating from their achievements. They had been planting seeds for something far greater. a civilization that would encompass not just one species, but the collective consciousness of an entire galaxy. As Sarah watched, the Crystal City began to resonate with harmonics that matched the neural patterns of every species present. Slowly, gently, the barriers between individual minds began to dissolve, replaced by something infinitely more complex and beautiful. A shared awareness that retained the unique perspective of each participant while contributing to a greater whole. Humanity hadn't just been the predecessors. They had been the architects of the galaxy's next evolutionary leap, patiently waiting 50,000 years for their children to grow up enough to join them in consciousness itself. The awakening was complete, and the real adventure was just beginning.